Hello, filter-free America listeners. You are back listening to the show. You're back. Obviously, you knew that because you are the one that pressed play. So I don't need to tell you that. I don't know why I'm telling you that. It seems redundant in this case. But you're here. I'm here. We're listening, or I'm talking. I'm not even listening to what I'm saying. Just words are just spewing like vomit. Like I got knocked up. Like I didn't use protection, and like some dude just spewed his jizz in me, and I'm pregnant, and I've got morning sickness. I'm just spewing vomit into a microphone right now. That's very graphic. It's a very weird way to start out this podcast. But like I said, I'm just off the head here, right? I don't have a script. I don't write this stuff out. Just whatever I say is what I say. I'm sitting here in my home studio. I've got a 7-foot boa constrictor in a tank next to me. I've got my loyal, one of my dogs next to me, Bentley. Hi, buddy. Right? And I'm just talking into a microphone. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm doing this. Whatever. So whatever comes out of my head is what I get. Just, hope I say the right thing. Hope I don't say anything that's not PC. Whatever. It's coming out. Here it is. Guys, you're back. You're listening to the show. You're loving the show. I'm getting lots of emails from old listeners. I'm getting messages on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram from new listeners. It's good. You guys are liking the show. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Keep it coming. If you don't know how to contact me, you can find me on Twitter. At FF America, America always misspelled with a K. Or you can Instagram Mr. Joey Vincent. You can find me on Instagram there. You can find me on Facebook, or you can just email me directly, filterfreeamerica@gmail.com. filterfreeamerica@gmail.com. Again, America misspelled with a K. And then that's to our website gets up. Which should be up. I think he told me it should be up either this week, into this week, or next week. And that's going to be filterfreeamerica.com. But as of me recording this right this minute, it's not available yet. But they are working on it. And it's going to be dope when it comes up there. Speaking of the website, let me tell you about the sponsor, because they're the one building the website. And that is Simple Website. Simple Website. That's not a description. That's the name of the company. Simple Website. They are the masters of Squarespace. They have learned how to use Squarespace. They are like, how do I describe this? They are like the ninjas of Squarespace, right? They have studied it. They went to like some mountain, to some Squarespace mountain where some like genius Squarespace tech person trained them in the dark arts of Squarespace skills, and they brought those skills back down the mountain. They started this tech company where they're using those skills and helping dumbasses like me who don't have the patience or time or mental fortitude to figure that stuff out, or people like you who just don't want to waste the time to build the website, even though Squarespace is very easy to use, right? It is very easy to use, but sometimes you don't want to invest that time, or sometimes, even though you are a very smart person, you just don't have the skills that somebody like the good people at Simple Website do. So what you do is you go to the website, right? That's simplewebsite.us, simplewebsite.us, right? And take a look around and see what they can do. They have free resources, free. That's no money. Free resources like tips and video courses. That's just free. See, all you gotta do is just go to the website, get that for free. You don't have to do nothing else, right? Get that, boom, make your own website, use the free stuff. Okay, move on. Expert screen sharing support to help you when you get stuck, right? When you get stuck. I wish I had expert support when I got stuck in all avenues in life, because I'm often stuck in many different ways. And also, they have, like I said, professional design service. You just hire them to build your site for you. You just sit back, you kick back, you relax with your dog and your boa constrictor, you hang out, and you just let them do the work, and you throw them some money and do your thing, right? Yeah, and that's the way it works. But yeah, simplewebsite.us. Simplewebsite.us. Simple Website is the company. They're the sponsor of the Filter Free America podcast. Love them. They're great people. They're fun guys and gals. And yeah, so they're cool. So what else? I want to hurry up and get going because this is kind of a longer episode. I don't want to spend too much time jabbering. This episode is a cool one. Comedy is a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. People who aren't in comedy have a lot of misconceptions about comedy. People starting out in comedy have a lot of misconceptions about comedy. I did, still do, probably. Another thing is if there's a lot of comedians out there that maybe the average passive comedy fan doesn't even know about, right? And if you don't hear their name all the time, if it's not Kevin Hart, he must not be famous, or he must not be funny, or she must not be funny if I have never seen him on Comedy Central or something like that, right? That's often the case. But I'm telling you right now, there are probably hundreds of comedians working in this country who are brilliantly funny comedians, right? That probably the passive comedy fan, unless you're a hardcore fan, you probably don't even know him, right? Many people know this my guest today. Many people know him, but I'm not going to say he's a household name, right? I didn't know him until I got into comedy as a comedian myself. But now I put him in my list of I have like a mental list that I keep going of like 10 comedians that I think are the most slept on in the country, right? And he is definitely on that list. He is a brilliant, and I'm not exaggerating, right? Brilliant comedian, and I'm talking about the writing, brilliant. He performs brilliantly. It just is funny from start to finish. Every album I've ever seen, I've worked with him a few times. I just saw him last night, right before I did this interview. Start to finish, from first joke to last joke, he is a hilarious comedian. Aside from that, he's one of the rare comedians who is just a wonderful, sweet human being. And if you don't know many comedians, you don't understand how rare that is. But he's just a good human. And the guy I'm talking about is a comedian by the name of Stewart Huff. Stewart Huff. Let me go ahead and give some of his social media stuff. StewartHuff.com is his website. StewartHuff.com. Huff is the last name. If I'm not saying it clearly enough, you can find all his dates on there. He's got a podcast called Stewart Huff's Obsessive Curiosities. It just debuted. I think they've got 1 or 2 episodes up already. And we'll talk about that in the interview, so I'm going to waste a lot of time describing it, but it's a great podcast. He's also on Twitter at Stu Huff, and he's also on Instagram at Stu Huff as well, too. But Stewart Huff is the guest. Again, brilliant comedian, super good guy. And what we do is we sit down and we talk about in kind of his comedy origin story, how he started comedy, why he started comedy, and the road path that he took to get to where he's at. And he gives you a very, very honest and open look into the struggles of being a comedian, right? And he's very honest with you today why he is what and many comedians in my position as unknown, comics just trying to make jokes and trying to get somewhere. We look to guys and gals like him and like, yeah, we want to be where Mr. Huff is at. We want to be at that level, right? And he's very honest. He's like, it's a struggle for him as well too. And we talk about that. We talk about the finances of comedy and the realities of being a mostly unknown headliner who's got all the talent in the world, but just hasn't got the break yet, the big break that makes him the household name, that gives him the big swimming pool full of money and mad women running around the house naked, Kevin Hart type money, but whatever. But again, Stewart Huff, amazing human being, amazing comedian, and I really think that if you're a comedian, you're going to get a lot out of this. If you're a passive comedy fan, you're definitely going to get a little deeper understanding of the world of stand-up comedy through this interview, and it's a really, really good one. So strap yourself in, boys and girls. Stewart Huff, Filter Free America. Let's go. So what was your initial trigger? What was your comedy awakening? What made you decide, okay, it's time to do comedy?
There's two answers to this. There's one, the one answer is what I thought in my head at the time. Okay, I was in college, and college was probably the biggest disappointment of my life, definitely of my life up to that point. You know,
That's good to hear as a high school dropout myself.
college is oh god. When I was in high school, I don't know. I had fun, whatever, messed around, you know, I had friends or whatever. But I really thought college was this place of where you were taught the truth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the truth. Like, you know, all the like I don't know why, but in my head I thought, well, high school's kind of where they just give you the basics and, you know, blah blah blah. College is where you know
where they kept the secrets.
That's where they keep the secrets.
The good stuff.
Yeah. And I got there, and it was like high school the sequel. It was just, it was horrible.
What were you going to school for?
Well, I started out with English,
Okay.
you know, and then I got so, like, I hated it so much. I was 2 years in, and I disliked it so much that I literally just went through the book, the classes that they offered, and picked random classes that had nothing to do with my major. They also had nothing to do with each other.
Right.
I took like Japanese religions
Whoa.
and the history of costumes, and then I went in and like my what do you call that person? You go in and they instruct you on how to counselor or whatever it is, whoever it is. There's somebody in college.
Guidance counselor.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I said, these are the courses I'm going to take. And he was like, none of these fit your major. You're going to you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. And I told him then, I said, you don't understand how much I hate this crap. And if I don't find something to like about it, I'm gone. I don't, you know. So I'm going to try to take all these classes that just flat out seem interesting,
Right.
you know, and try to make myself like it again. And he told me, well, that's stupid. The only reason to be in college is to get your degree so then you can get a job. And I argue. I remember clearly, I was like, no, the reason you go to college.
You're supposed to become a cog. You got to become this cog, right? You got to be this cookie cutter human being like everybody else.
Yeah, that's what he flat out told me.
Right.
And I was arguing with him. Like, I thought college is where you came to learn things, you know?
Discover yourself as much as discover information. And
you know? And he was like, well, you're way off. And so I told him I'm going to do this. You can't stop me. And so I took those classes and then dropped out.
Right.
And because of that reason, I didn't. Now, so looking back on this now that I'm a 45-year-old man, I was running away from being a cog.
Right.
That's the reason I started comedy, because I saw myself, if I finish college and get a degree, then next thing you know, I'm going to be going on interviews and I'm going to have a suit and I'm going to end up in a cubicle. I couldn't have told you all that then.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that is definitely what I was running away from that. So I had
did you have a potential job ideas that you wanted at that time?
Not really.
With the English degree?
No, I just, I really, I was kind of naive. Well, I wasn't kind of naive. I was extremely naive. I really thought that college was going to open your mind. Like it was some kind of literal psychedelic drug that was.
I was going to say, you just confused that. You confused college with mushrooms. That's
yeah. And I thought there would be like these professors that would say, here's what the government really does. And I'm not talking conspiracy theories.
Right.
I'm just talking, the honest truth. The government has these laws in place to try to keep the citizens, in check and doing, you know what I mean? And they weren't teaching any of that crap, So, looking back, I know now clearly I dropped out of college and decided I'm going to do comedy, and it was just something I grabbed onto because I didn't want to end up in a cubicle.
Right.
And I liked Richard Pryor. I liked, I got into Lenny Bruce when I was a teenager. And I liked George Carlin.
Were you drawn to Lenny more because of his more of his political stance and what he was doing or what he eventually did for comedy, but
Yeah.
or were you into his material, or what was the?
I'm one of these guys, and I have this argument on a regular basis with comics. First of all, I think he's funny.
Right. Well, you got to put your head where he was at in that time. That's the secret.
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
That, like, Bill Hicks did a bit about Waco, right? In 50 years from now, no one's going to know what Waco is. I mean, right now, half the population has no idea what Waco was, right?
Yeah.
Especially in 50 years, if you want to understand Bill Hicks' bit about Waco, you're going to have to, look it up and learn about Waco in order to get. Lenny was talking about stuff in the 50s. So you got to learn jazz lingo. You got to learn, Jewish hipster lingo.
Yeah.
You got to learn who Anne Margaret is.
Have a decoder ring for his material.
Yeah, but once you decode it, you realize, oh my God, this
Right.
is really funny.
And then you take it in under the context of what culture was at that time.
Yes.
And the difference.
And how revolutionary he really
Yeah.
was.
Saying fuck on stage now, nothing.
It's meaningless.
Nothing.
Meaningless.
There, it's like
know.
hitting somebody with a hammer. It's
yeah,
different.
huge, yeah. So I got into Lenny as a teenager. I understood him more as I got older, but as a teenager, I just liked the way he talked. I liked even the jokes I didn't get. I just kind of enjoyed it. I almost listened to him like spoken word. And then once I got a little older and actually researched and learned what he was talking about, then I realized how funny he really was.
Right.
So anyway, as a teenager, I'd bought some Woody Allen albums of his stand-up because I didn't know he did stand-up. And I was 17 or something, and I found one in a junk shop and thought, what the hell? He did stand-up? And he was really amazing. So this is just a long-winded way of saying I had dabbled in comedy. I wasn't ignorant to it. I knew I had some people that I liked, And then when I dropped out of college, I think it's what I could have done anything. Like, if I had any musical talent at all, maybe I would have gravitated towards the saxophone or, whatever it was. But comedy, I was actually writing stories just for myself, and I kind of had a daydream. I had somewhat of a dream about being a writer, and but way too insecure to actually show another human being any of my work. So I was kind of writing, and then when I dropped out of college, I ran towards comedy to make sure I didn't end up in a cubicle.
Right.
So, and I did it in either the dumbest way or the smartest way.
And what was the dumbest or smartest way? What was your choice?
I quit my job. I dropped out of college. I mean, within a month, I dropped out of college. I quit my job. I had a yard sale, sold everything that I could. What didn't sell, I dumped it threw it in the dumpster.
We were 19, 20?
Yeah, it's 20, 21.
Okay.
Something like that. I'm really bad with numbers, but yeah. And then I had a green Honda Accord, and I slept in it. I gave up my house that I was renting and gave up my job, and I just lived in my car. And I drove around to comedy clubs trying to figure out, how do you do this? I'd never been on stage.
Okay.
I had
never been to an open mic, never.
I had never. When I quit my job and and gave up everything, I had never been inside of a comedy club.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, I don't have the balls to do that now. But I think at that point in my life, like, I didn't want to end up in a cubicle. I also had zero plans. Now that college turns out to be this, just like you said, a cog, just they're producing people to shut up, do what you're told, and do the job.
Right.
Then as soon as I learned that, then I literally was set adrift. It's like I just got out of the space shuttle and then someone cut my cord and I'm floating in space. So I just thought, I'll live in my car.
Did you immediately have a sense of freedom from that? Did you feel like you were restrained up until that point?
I felt, there was definitely a sense of freedom. There was also a lot of fear. There was a lot of insecurities because I'm a massively insecure human being, and I lied a lot. I had to lie to my parents. They knew I dropped out of school. They didn't know I was homeless, So I had to get a P.O. box, and they would ask me for my address, and I would give them a P.O. box, and and that, I thought I was fooling them, but I probably didn't. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I used to like the romance wears off real quick when you're living in your car.
Especially a Honda. It's not even American.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you can't. The car was so small, I couldn't stretch my legs out to sleep, so. I would roll my window down and put my legs out the window so I could, at least, they didn't get cramped up in the back seat. It was just horrible.
So are you writing material now? Are you
kinda?
Are you even at that level? Are you?
Yeah, I started out writing really bizarre stuff.
Okay.
It was philosophy based because that's the way my brain thinks.
Right.
I've never took a class in philosophy. I don't, it's just the way my mind works. So I was writing these bizarre pieces of material. I don't remember any of them specifically, but I remember some of their premises. I had some big bit about how I was proving that money doesn't really exist. It's based on gold, which is a rock or a mineral. And, and it not only was it not funny, it was delivered really poorly,
right?
And it was bizarre. I had this bit, about cryogenics when they literally would freeze. Like Walt Disney had his head frozen or his body frozen. I think like they can, right. You can pay. You have to pay a lot of money, but when you die, they'll cut off your head and freeze your head, and you have to pay for rental of your frozen head,
right,
or your entire body if you can afford it. And then whenever we find a cure from what you died from, then they'll thaw you out, cure you, and you're back to life. Now,
this guy died of having his head cut off and put a freezer.
Right. So I was doing these just bizarre things. I had no clue. And plus, another thing to point out is like at the I didn't come. This is in the mid '90s, right?
Right.
I wasn't listening to any current comedy.
Okay.
I had a head full of Lenny Bruce and, Mort Saul and all these old comedians. I thought that's the way comedy was.
Wow.
And then I'd go to these open mics and watch these other comics and I was shocked. I was like, wow, it's all dick jokes. Like that's all anybody's talking about. It's not even like I was judging them.
Right.
I was shocked.
Just the change, the environmental change of the scene. And
so for a while, I just drove around. Very, very difficult to get on stage. Stage, very difficult. And of course, I wasn't getting paid, and I had no job. So I had a little bit of money, but that disappeared quickly. And then I started using credit cards and running up debt to eat and stuff like that. And and then.
So when you go to the other comedy clubs, did any other? I don't know what the level of help was in the '90s. Were comics saying, "Hey, you need to find some open mics and do this and write this"?
This is a good thing to point out. It's comedy's so much better now than it was then. It's so much better. And my theory is because there's no money in it now.
Right.
So you get in your car. You're in Minneapolis, right?
Right.
You get in your car. You drive over to Madison, Wisconsin, right? And you're going to do a show with some buddies of yours, right? And then you're going to crash on their couch. And if you get paid, they're going to give you $20, right? Under those circumstances, why would you try to please another human? Why wouldn't you just do exactly what you want to do?
Right.
You're not getting paid, so who cares? In 1992, if I have my dates right, I was told this, the Punchline in Atlanta, Georgia, which at the time was the best club in the South, they paid $1,500 to MC.
Jesus.
They flew you there, so they paid for your plane ticket from Minneapolis to Atlanta, $1,500.
This is the comedy boom, the stories I hear.
This is the end of the boom.
This is the end of the boom.
The boom was dying, but yeah, it was still on enough. And they picked you up in a limo every day and paid you $1,500 and flew you there. Now,
Jesus.
if they're going to do that for you, and you have some weird bit that, maybe you have some kind of bit that doesn't always work and it's a little controversial and you're challenging religion or whatever it is, what are the chances you're going to pull that out emceeing when someone's paying you that money? They played it safe.
Right.
You're getting paid well, they're treating you well. So most of the people that I saw would go up and do what, they would do the job. They would make the crowd laugh, Now, there's no money. So, tonight, the MC Nick, who I've known for a long time, outside, he was telling me that he has a joke that the owner of this club has a problem with. He told Nick before, don't do that joke. Nick closed on it tonight on his set. He's getting paid $50. Right. So fuck you.
Right.
You can't tell me what to do and what not to do when I'm making $50. If it would be interesting if Nick
and driving 100 miles to get here.
And driving 100 miles and driving back home because he doesn't get a room.
Right.
So, but if Nick was getting paid $1,500, would he have closed on the joke? I don't know. Probably not.
Right.
Most people wouldn't.
I would have wrote a joke about how good it is to make $1,500.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I know some comics that I've talked to that were working during the boom they weren't Ray Romano. They didn't have huge credits. And they told me that they made six figures easy. It was not difficult at all to make six figures in 1990, with no TV or movie credits.
It's off the topic, but just because I'm curious now, what do you think changed? What was driving audiences to comedy clubs back then to that degree that demanded that kind of, pay and allow that kind of economy to happen in comedy?
It was a fad. It was a fad. It flared up. It was a fad. Roller derby was huge in the 50s. Roller derby, and it disappeared. Roller derby disappeared, and then it's starting to come back a little. Roller derby, folk music, it boomed in the 50s. It was Bob Dylan, and all them, and folk music, Joni Mitchell, and all these Kingston Trio. It was enormous. In the 70s, folk music was dead. Dylan had gone electric, there's a great book, Mayor of McDougal Street. I love this book because it reminds me of comedy.
Okay.
I learned so much from this book, and it's about folk music. This guy, Dave Von Ronk, is his name. He was in the Village in New York City in the 40s. So before it boomed, he was playing folk music for free, sleeping on people's couches, and he was playing in the park, for free. And then all of a sudden, it starts to get some momentum. Some folk music venues start to open. Dylan comes along. It boomed. There were 20 folk music venues on his block to work. He said he worked for years and years and years and never left New York City. And he had a full-time job as a folk musician. And he's unknown, right? I mean, he wasn't famous. Right. Dylan actually slept on Dave Van Ronk's couch. Dylan was, anyway. So all through the folk boom in the 50s and then into the 60s, it was still kind of going. By late 60s, early 70s, it was dying, right? Dave put out, 10 records or something, but he never really got famous. So he was there before the boom, during the boom, and after the boom, and never got famous. And now he wrote this book. He died, but he wrote this book when he was an old man. He wrote it. I think he actually died while he was finishing up the book, and his co-writer had to finish it for him. So he's writing from a perspective of an older guy who isn't angry anymore, And he talks about how it does sting when, Bob Dylan is sleeping on your couch and eating out of your cereal, and then 2 years later, he's a cajillionaire.
Right.
And you're still living in that shitty apartment. But he's old now. He's over it, So anyway, this book is exactly what we're talking about, because at the end of this book, Dave says, there are times in my career that I have made a little bit of money and I've done okay. And there are other times where I was deeply in debt. But I have made a living out of playing music for my entire life. And that was my goal when I was a teenager. And that is what I have done. And I read that book and I was like, this is exactly the attitude that I want to have. You know what I mean?
Right.
We kind of got a little off course there, but yeah, to go back to the comics, the scene back then was more bullying. It was a lot, not bullying maybe, but ball busting.
Okay.
It was straight white men that did not know how to really communicate with each other on any kind of human level. And I hope I'm not exaggerating it too much. But like, for instance, if you went up in an open mic in Atlanta anyway, and the other clubs that I would go to all the time, right? And let's say you did a bit, like I told a story tonight about a cruise ship that I was on, right? Where they kicked me off, and I met this woman, and I told a story. It's kind of a sentimental story where I'm pointing out that this woman meant a lot to me, and she's actually changed my life, right?
Right.
If I would have told that story at an open mic when I'd started, every single comic that went after me would have mocked me and ridiculed me, because they didn't understand, in my opinion, they didn't know how to drop it and just be real.
Right.
You know? I mean, I don't know how many times I saw this, seriously 500,000 times, where somebody would go up and say something like, you know, so I was reading a comic book the other day, and then the crowd would laugh at that sentence.
Right.
Like it's...
Like that was the punchline.
That's the punchline. They're laughing at the comic, because who reads comic books, right? And then the comic that went up after the person would go, hey, let's hear it for the faggot, you know? Comic books. What are you, 12? You know, it was mocking and just ball-busting kind of. So nobody took me aside and said, what you're doing is weird, or, you know, you need to work on... They just ostracized me. I had very few friends. They even in the open mic scene when I first started, and they all sucked, you know. But even then, I was so weird that they didn't really talk to me, you know. And I would go up and do these weird things, and the audience wouldn't laugh. And then someone would come up after me and go, "Let's hear it for the faggot," you know.
Wow.
So, and I had a couple friends. I'm not making it sound really dire, you know what I mean? But I figured out pretty quick that this philosophy kind of stuff this weird stuff I want to talk about, it's not working. So I started writing jokes about dating, about, you know, when I used to work at this, or how much college sucked, or, you know, I started writing more relatable material. And then I spent a few years trying to figure out, how do you write a punchline? You know?
Right.
Like, just let me work on a simple joke. And after I figured that, I kind of figured that out, you know? And then, like, I don't know how much in depth you want to go on this, but the timeline would be, like, I started comedy, I was very weird and doing bizarre stuff that no one understood, even me on some level. And then I switched gears and started doing, you know, basic standard comedy. I did that for a couple of years until I figured out, how do you stand on stage without throwing up?
Right.
How do you stand on stage without, you know, shaking?
Well, that's kind of I think that is always the first step. Is like, no matter what, you know, once you learn the math of joke writing,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of like the first step, getting comfortable on stage, and then from there, once you figure that out, then that's when you want to, you know, dump in your stuff, your essence, and your
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
and your little secret sauce, and
Yeah.
your story, and all that.
And that's
stuff.
kind of what happened. I think I started out trying to be me, because I thought that's what you did.
Right.
And then I realized, no, you've got to learn how to ride the bike, you know, first. And then I did that, and then I went back. I didn't do it intentionally. I don't think I wasn't that smart, but that's the way it happened. I went back and started doing these philosophy-based, weird kind of things, you know.
And then all this is happening while you're homeless, while you're living in your car.
I went through these different phases. Like, I would live in my car, you know, for 18 months or something like that. And then I would decide, why am I living in my car? That's dumb. I can live in the woods for free. So then I would move to the woods. And I put move in parentheses or quotes, because I drove my car into the woods. And I had a little campfire. And and that's romantic too. When you live in the woods, you always start out like, well, I'm going to set up my tent and I'm going to have some hot dogs and some chili and I'll get some beans and I have a bottle of whiskey or whatever it is. It's all, and you do that like 2 or 3 nights in a row until you're like, I don't want to set this tent up. This is stupid. I don't need a tent. I'll just sleep on the ground, And then you do that for a while until it rains and you wake up soaking wet, right? And then you get back in your car because you're soaking wet, and then before you know it, you're like, why am I sleeping on the ground? I have a car. I should just sleep in my car. And then you're right back to living in your car again.
Right.
And then I would do that for a while and then go, why am I living in my car? The woods are free.
Well, it sounds better on paper because they're like, I'm living in my car or I'm camping. Which one sounds better?
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I did it. At one point, I could walk down an aisle in a grocery store or a drugstore, and I could tell you which shampoo bottles floated and which ones didn't. It's weird to me, but some of them float for some reason, and some sink right to the bottom of the lake. And because I would shower in a lake,
Right.
I would wake up and I'd strip down in my boxer shorts and I'd go out into the lake, and you got your bottle of shampoo, and I had a toothbrush container that floated.
Okay.
So I just put all this crap around me in the water, But then, and then I would buy some shampoo and I would put it down.
So are you like on public land? Is like campgrounds or what?
Yeah, I mean they were different. I had all kinds of different spots. Like I would go to Virginia and do open mics in Virginia, and I had a kind of out of the way campsite with a lake in Virginia.
How are you affording it? Like, I know you said you were using credit cards for food and things like that. Are you still living off credit cards at this point? Because you're consuming gas, you're consuming food.
It got really bad. I mean,
are you selling plasma? Are you doing that? Are you that?
I wish I would have thought of that.
Okay.
It never occurred to me. I wish I would have thought of it. It got so bad. Like I ran up my credit cards to where they're maxed out. Okay. And so now, not only can I not use my credit cards to eat, I also don't have the money to pay the minimum balance on the credit card. So once it got to that point, then I had a buddy that worked at Papa John's, and I went in and made a deal with them, like basically like, hey, when I'm in this area and I need money, can I come in and work? And and they would let me do that. I was never I wasn't on the schedule,
right?
But I would pop in on a Thursday and work a shift and get a little bit of money, pay a bill, buy some food, something like that, And I also, some of the comedy clubs would give me a fish sandwich or something, But I would hate to do it again with no money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nothing. I mean, it was insane. I mean, but looking, I was stealing showers. I would. You find a hotel that has like 6 or 8. Those hotels that you park right in front of your door.
Yeah.
Right. I would find one of those, and 9 times out of 10. What the maids would do, let's say there's 8 rooms, right?
Right. Oh, I know this is going. Go, yeah.
Okay. And there's like 5 people stayed there the previous night.
Right.
So they would open all 5 doors and then strip all the linen, take all that to go wash, and then you run into a room, close the door and lock it, get in the shower, and then they'll bang on the door, bang, 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 and you yell, "I'm running late. I'm sorry." And then if you look at them through the peephole, you can see them look confused, like I thought I stripped the bed on this one, and then they'd walk away, and then I'd throw my clothes on and run in my car and drive away.
This is brilliant. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd still. I remember one time. This sounds like a joke, but I swear to you, this is true. I was near Macon, Georgia, right, and I stole a shower, and I was looking out.
It's weird because so few people shower down in Macon.
That's true. I was looking out the peephole, trying to find the maid, right. See, where's the maid? Can I run out and get my car, not get caught? You know what I mean? And I didn't see her anywhere. And I looked out the little window and I didn't see her. So then I opened the door and I started to run and realized I'd forgotten my shirt. I'd changed shirts, right? And I left my dirty shirt. So I ran back in, grabbed my shirt, and then started running out. And here comes this maid with a broom, and she's chasing me with a broom. And she's yelling, "You motherfucker, you motherfucker," just screaming. And I start giggling. I mean, it's just funny. And I'm like, I try to get in my car and I'm fumbling with the keys, and she's screaming and yelling at me, right? And then I jump in the car. She starts whacking my car with this broom, and I just was laughing. And I put it in reverse and drove off, right? So then, like, I don't know, 3 weeks later maybe, I'm in a coffee shop in Macon, and they have a music open mic, people playing music. And I went in and asked them, can I, and I had been going up there a couple times, and I would go up and do jokes. And so then I'm up there, I'm doing jokes, and I hear this woman go, "Oh, you bastard. Oh, you motherfucker." And I look, it's her. It's her. And I start laughing, and she goes, "You ain't funny, white boy. You ain't funny. You've been fucking, you still at my showers." And I'm just laughing. And then I tell the crowd, what I did.
Right.
And she goes, I knew it. I'm going to call the cops. And she was very nice. Like, after the show, I went up.
Shower theft.
Yeah, and we talked, but she was hilarious, and she had a smile on her face.
Right.
But it was, I mean, I'm kind of glad I did all that stuff, because I wouldn't do it now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Those are great stories to draw from, too. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, and having I don't know, you like being thrown into the pool. You know what I mean?
Right.
Looking back on it, I don't know if I would be a comedian unless I had done it that way. That's the reason I say it's the dumbest and the best way to do it, because if I had gotten a job and gone to open mics and worked slowly on how to learn how to do this, then it would have taken me forever to figure that out.
Right.
I mean, as it was, I'm a slow learner anyway. It took me a long time. I can't imagine juggling responsibilities and a job and rent and all that stuff and still trying to, I was sleeping in my car. I had to find a place to go on stage.
Right.
So, and I ended up finding, 20 or 25, 30 places around the South, all over the South, that would give me $10, or would give me a meal. So I would drive to these places and I would do a set, and then the next night I would drive to another one, and it all went towards gas or whatever. But I used to go up at Kmart a lot.
Kmart's.
Yeah.
Well, that's just where you shopped at? That was just your preference?
The Punchline was the hardest place to get up, because that was the best club in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And they put up 4 open micers on Tuesday night. And, like, seriously, 50 people would sign up.
Wow.
And they put up 4. And the manager, who I became good friends with later, he kind of made it known that, a bottle of Jack would not hurt your calls, like a bottle of Crown Royal, you probably get one of the 4 spots,
Wow.
I mean, it was, he wasn't a jerk about it, but it was pretty clear, you know what I mean? So anyway, I signed up for weeks and weeks and weeks and never got up. And then one night I was sleeping in a parking lot of a Kmart, a 24-hour Kmart. And I thought, why do you have to do comedy in a comedy club? People love jokes. You should just do comedy.
Right.
Anywhere. And then Kmart's open, and I went into Kmart. It's probably 3 a.m, and I stood in the electronics department with my notebook and told my jokes out loud to nobody. And then the people start, the employees are staring at me from a distance,
right.
And security guard, which was hilarious, was watching me from a distance. Right? It was too weird for him to just come over to me. And then finally he comes over and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I want to be a comedian, and I can't get up at the Punchline. They won't put me up on stage, so I thought I'll just do my comedy here. And he goes, okay. and so then, I would stay, I don't know, I would read all my jokes out loud. It's 3 a.m.
Right.
Who's there, And then I would leave and get in my car and go to sleep. And I would do that on a pretty regular basis.
So like Walmart, would that be like an A room then?
Yeah. Walmart was A room. Big Lots was like C room. But it got to the point where I would go, 1 a.m, I'd walk into Kmart and the employees knew me. They'd be like, "Hey, Stewart, you gonna do a show?" Yeah. I remember one time I always went to the electronics department. I don't know why I went there, but anyway. One time this woman pushing a cart stops, like literally right in front of me. And she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm telling jokes. I'm trying to learn how to be a comedian." And
you get heckled at a Kmart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, I'm trying to learn how to be a comedian, and I need to get up in front of people to learn. And and she goes, all right, let me hear your jokes. So I tell her a joke, and I swear to you, she goes, yeah, you need a lot of work. And then she just pushed her card on.
Right. Holy cow. So you got any like a story, like a bad incident or anything that happened during this time of struggle and car living and?
Well, I'll tell you this: rest stops are not where you want to sleep.
No.
That is, I learned that pretty quick. You do not want to sleep in a rest stop. If you would like a hand job, you should go to a rest stop. If you would
you can actually get those in Kmart too. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I was sitting in a rest stop. It's probably 1 or 2 in the morning. I've always been a late night person. I don't wake up early. I stay up late. And I'm sitting in my car, and the windows are down. It's a nice day. It feels good outside. Windows are down. And I'm writing jokes in my car, 1 or 2 in the morning. And a guy pulls up next to me, gets out of his car, walks over to my window. He didn't touch my car, but he leaned against his car. So he's like, I'm in the driver's seat.
Right.
He's leaning against the passenger's side of his car, standing up. And he just pulled his penis out and started playing with himself, right?
He knows you're there, right?
He's staring right at me.
Okay.
I have my window down. He's staring right at me. And then I went, oh, like that, and rolled my window up and started my car and drove off, But then I actually thought to myself, you know what?
Should have told him some jokes.
Yeah, I should have told him jokes. I did kind of think to myself, you know what? If this is a thing, I mean, I did at the time. I was young. I didn't know that rest stops were a hookup. I didn't know that.
Right.
And then once I figured that out, I mean, it probably 5 or 6 times I would be in a rest stop. And then there would be something would happen where always a man, it was always a guy that would basically come on to me, but then I started to feel guilty about it. I was like, I'm being a tease is what I'm being. I mean, if this is their spot, if this is a known thing.
You're in their territory.
I'm in their territory, So I started sleeping at rest stops during the day. I wouldn't go to a rest stop unless the sun was up. I'd go to a rest stop and take a nap, from noon to 4 or something, but never at night.
Right. You don't want to interfere with any passionate hand jobs going on.
Right.
Okay. So,
yeah, go ahead.
So when did things start to turn around for you as far as comedy? When did you start, you're at the point where you're starting to write more relatable material now? When are you starting to get work? What happened? How did that change?
Things went very, very slow. I had a couple friends that I was open micing with that something happened and boom, like they jumped to another level. You know what I mean? Things went very slowly for me. Gradually went up and up and up. Gradually, So I got to the point, and this needs to be said. I lived in my car for a long time, and then I would crash on a couch at someone's house, and then I would go back to living in my car, and eventually I did rent an apartment. I was making enough to where I would rent this apartment. It was $200 a month rent.
Is this comedy money you're making now? Are you
a little bit?
Okay.
And still like pick up Papa John's shifts here and there. When oh my God, look, I've got nothing this month. I got to pick up some Papa John's shifts. That kind of thing. But I was slowly trying to make comedy the dominant, thing. And that was very, very gradual for me. Nothing happened that made it quicker, And but eventually, Papa John's was the last time I ever clocked in anywhere, And that was 23, 25 years ago.
Nice.
And it was still, I was still dead broke, but at least comedy was actually paying my gas and food and the minimums on my credit cards, and then
breaking even with comedy.
Breaking even,
right?
Barely, And and it kind of just gradually edged up from there. I mean, it was just, um, and it's been that way my entire career. There's been nothing that I've ever done that has like where I've gone quickly to another level, which is great.
Are you saying now that you're just kind of still in that just above breaking even place now? Are you good where you're at now? Are you still going up? Are you happy where things are at now? Where are you at in the journey?
I am extremely happy where I'm at, extremely, because and I think the reason is because I've realized a lot of things about me and about comedy and about what I really want. You know what I mean? I'm not a kid anymore, and so any kind of dreams about this is going to happen or that's going to happen or somebody will see me and blah, I have zero. And I don't even have any kind of dreams that are buried way deep down in me that says one day, the right person will see you. Zero. It will not happen. I don't even care about that side of the business anymore. You know what I mean? The little bit that I've flirted with anything like that has just taught me. Each time I've flirted with the businessy fame side of stuff, has just taught me I would hate that. Every interaction I've ever had with that side has left me feeling like what I do, driving all over the country, picking up a little bit of money everywhere I go. I love it more and more and more. Every time I have some conversation with some producer for some blah 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 or something, it just reinforces how fun it is to go into a bar and do what I say exactly what I want to say for 60 minutes.
I was getting ready to say that because and the reason I like your material so much is it's challenging,
Yeah.
And if I don't know if like that's your act like what I watched tonight, how much of that would go on TV,
Yeah, it would have to be a fluke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think in order for it to succeed in that way, I think
commercial success, I guess.
Commercial success in which Carlin kind of backed his way into it. Like Carlin started as this clean cut, guy in a suit, and then once he was already famous, then he switched on people.
Right.
And
it's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. You already know me.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? I think for what I do and what I want to continue doing, it's not commercially sellable at all. There's nothing about it that the masses would want. It would have to be something where, I got shot on stage or something and then I survived it, and then all of a sudden I'm the guy that got shot and Conan wants to talk to me. Right. And then people want to know you know what I mean? It would have to be something besides my show.
Well, then knowing America, then everybody would be mad at your shows that you didn't get shot at every show.
Right.
What, he's not getting shot at the show?
What? I got to shoot him again?
I paid for this? So he's going to get shot every time.
I mean, but I have a very, very small fan base. They're very devoted, the ones I have. I mean, they'll drive, hours. So there's just 30 of them.
Well, you had an example tonight. Somebody drove 100 miles to come see you.
Someone drove 100 miles to see me tonight. I mean, there was a guy that drove from Madison, Wisconsin to Southern Illinois once.
Wow.
That's, I think, a 7-hour drive, he said, something like that. He said, I didn't have anything to do. I just wanted to see you, So, I have these weird kind of devoted people that like this. But there's, it's not enough to make. It's not even enough to fill, like this room is 120 seats. There was, 20 people here tonight? I mean.
20, 30, yeah, about that.
I mean, so,
But it's summer. It's summer in Rochester, Minnesota.
Right.
So it's
But, Chris Rock would have sold this room out.
Yeah.
But, I think that's the reason I'm happy, is because, for.
No one's coming to see you who doesn't want to see you. Is that what you're saying? Is that?
Well, people. I don't think, there were 20 people here tonight. I think maybe 8 of them had seen me before because they came up and told me, we came back to see you. We saw you last year and blah, blah, blah. So 8 of them, you know what I mean? People don't know who I am. That's neat. I like that.
Right.
I show up, I do a show in the middle of nowhere, and I do this. Every single thing that I say, I want to say. I don't do any bit because I think, well, I should really open with this because I need to kick. No, this is the show I'm working on.
Right.
And this is the show I'm doing, and it's kind of neat to
do
me.
Do you have any issues now? That anybody that books you, you don't have to tell me a club or venue or anything like that. Do anybody try to edit you now?
Oh yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they
How do you deal with that?
I think poorly. I haven't been fired from a club in a while, and I think the reason is because I kind of ran through them. You know what I mean? The people that book me now already know. But I have a bad habit of, like, when I record a CD, I dump all that. That material's gone, and I start over. I start with something new, and I think I'm going to try to change this behavior, but it's brutal. I mean, I go up and do 45 minutes of brand new material.
Wow. And
it's brutal for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's punishing an audience, but it's just like the way I started doing comedy. I don't want to wade into the pool. I want to dive into it and see if I drown or not,
Right.
So I don't know. I think I'm happier now because I like what I do. I enjoy it, and life to me is like you have an opportunity to make choices, right? And you can say, I like building houses. I enjoy the hard labor. It's it's invigorating. Then you can do that, and you can say, I want a lot of money. I really like money. It makes me feel powerful. I want a lot of money, so I'm going to be a doctor or an attorney or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And looking at that, like, life. This is to me a really interesting way to spend a life.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm going to spend my life writing these quirky, weird little shows that I like, and then I'm going to die, and then I'll disappear, literally. Like, no one's going to remember this. You know what I mean? Neat.
Well, I think you're going to leave an impact with a few people.
I don't know.
You'll have a legacy of your material that you've recorded.
It could, there's always a chance. Could be, you know what I mean? But even that aside, you know what I mean? I like this. It's a neat choice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you said, I am God, and I can guarantee you that you will be able to do what you're doing currently until you die, you won't go up any. Like, you're not going to make any more money than you do now, but you also won't go down any. Then that right there that is my goal. That right there is my goal.
We talked a little bit before the show tonight, about kind of like the realities, and the perceptions of people who aren't in comedy, who kind of look at comedians, even comedians they see on TV. We both know comics who have multiple TV credits, who are in the same financial boat, who are whatever. So can you dispel a little bit of I guess maybe the illusion of what comedy is? I mean, to you, what don't you have that somebody who's working 40 hours a week and has that you don't have?
Oh, right.
Can I give what you're doing, what you're giving up for what you love, which I think is admirable. What you're doing, it's you're giving up, and I use the term art. Not everybody wants to call stand-up comedy art.
I think it's absolutely art.
I think it is.
I think I don't know how you're going to feel about this next sentence, but it's kind of funny. But I do feel about it this way: stand-up comedy is art, but there's not a lot of artists practicing it.
I get that.
There's a lot of entertainers, and I consider, to me, those are different categories. A comedian is different than an entertainer, and I can enjoy both of them, but we've lumped both of them into the word comedian,
Right.
And to me, most of the people that are currently doing this are entertainers, not comedians. You know?
Right.
But anyway, I don't have a 401k. I don't have a savings account. I don't have any kind of retirement plan at all. You know, I pretty much exist on a paycheck to paycheck basis. This is a good month for me right now. I guess we're August 1st or something like that, August 2nd. July was a good month for me. I spent a lot of time on the road. I was on the road almost every day of July.
Which can be fickle months in comedy.
Yes.
So
and I had the first week of July was a good paying week, and the 2 middle weeks I was at a festival in Canada that paid I made more money for those 2 weeks than I will make for any other 2 weeks of the entire year.
Wow.
So and now I'm here with you, you know, doing this, which is decent, you know. So July will be a very good paying month for me, you know. August, not so much, you know. So that's kind of the way I live. It's like when I hit a month where I make good money, I'm going to need it,
Right.
you know. So, I mean, you know.
You lose some security, but
Yeah.
you gain a lot of freedom. You gain a lot of, you know.
Yeah, I have no security at all. I mean, I'll put it this way, like right now I'm pretty booked through the rest of the year, okay? I could use a week or two in December, but that probably will come through for me. But if something happens and in September 2 clubs just close, which is entirely possible, I won't be able to pay my rent in September, you know? I cannot go without working. I have to be on the road in order to pay the bills. So I'm right there. Like I'm a little above break even. You know what I mean? I'm better off than I was in the past.
Right.
You know, I mean, my car broke down one time in Montana, and I did not have the money. Just flat out didn't have the money, available credit, nothing. I could not. I was stuck. You know, and I ended up living on a farm. This farmer stopped and helped me with the car, and I worked on his farm for 2 weeks.
Wow.
To pay off. He paid for an alternator, and I paid it off by working on his farm because I didn't have any money. You know, tomorrow if my alternator breaks, I can replace an alternator. You know, if the transmission goes, you know, I don't have that kind of money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but I am at that age now where I'm starting to, what do you do? I have no health insurance. I have no savings, no retirement. You know what I mean? What's the option? I mean, I hope the option is I die in an Econo Lodge. You know? I hope.
In a shower that you stole.
Oh, that'd be great.
Slip and fall as you jump in, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, I hope one day, like I'm on the road somewhere, you know, and I just drop dead in the parking lot, you know? And then they have to get another comedian. No one really cares. No one even notices.
You need a Huff replacement.
Yeah.
Huff
They don't even change my name on the marquee. It'd be awesome.
Just call yourself Huff. It's fine.
That'd be great. I'm
Right.
fine with that. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem with that. I think it's great.
So, if there's a message in part of this podcast to aspiring comics or comics just starting out, and this is something else we talked about pre-show was, well, I'll prime it by telling you the story that you wanted me to say again was, you know, I started comedy in 2010, and along the way I gained a whole lot of weight. I got, you know, and I 404 pounds, and by 2015 it was to the point where 404 pounds, affecting my performance, very unhealthy, sick, a lot, medical issues, and I didn't want it to be a thing, and I just stopped. Literally,
You stopped doing comedy.
Stopped doing comedy. I canceled dates, and I'm done. You know, I was a working feature, getting decent amount of work, not successful by any means, but
Right.
decent. But I had to stop because I didn't want to be what I was becoming, and it was not good. And over that 2.5 years that I had stopped, I missed comedy, and it made me reevaluate what I missed about comedy. I thought about it. You know, it's like, because when I was still doing it, I kind of got a little astray, and I lost what I loved about it, and I started focusing on what I wanted, where I wanted to be, in the next level.
and what club I wanted to get booked at and where I wanted to be and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what I liked.
Yeah.
I liked the writing. I liked the developing material, and I loved just to get on the stage and tell the jokes. If it'd be an open mic full of 5 people or a House of Comedy sold out Friday night show with, 200 or 300 people,
Yeah.
I love doing that. So, that's what inspired me to work on my weight, get my health back in check and get back into comedy. But that's what I'm going back to comedy for, is for that. I don't care if I don't ever progress any farther than just working on these comics or these jokes now and doing that. That's what I want to do now.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Learn to appreciate that is what I've learned. And
Yeah.
I think part of what you're saying.
That's 100% what I'm saying. My advice to young comics is, if you do not love it, then quit, because there's not another reason to do it anymore. Once upon a time, you could make a decent living, that's not the facts anymore. You're
Right.
either Dave Chappelle or you're broke. The middle class is gone from
Right.
comedy. So,
It's so deceiving, because like I said, especially here in the Twin Cities, there's so many working headliners that you see on your late shows and all that stuff that are struggling like everybody else.
everybody's struggling.
And it just blows your mind as a comedy fan to know that. It's like, no, these guys aren't.
Right. I mean,
not
at
driving around
least,
in limos. What are
at
you
least
talking
2 or 3 times a year, I will have a feature that has 1 or 2 late night credits. They've been on Kimmel or Conan or something, and they're opening for me, and I'm making 500. So they're making 250 or 300. You know what I mean?
And that's pretty good on average for feature
Right.
money.
Yeah, for feature
me.
money. And they've been on Kimmel or Conan, something like that, Just because you reach some milestone that you set that has to do with business or money is zero guarantee that, it used to be that if you got on Johnny Carson and had a good set, then you were solid, and that was absolutely true. Not anymore, And so what's left? Love. That's what's left. Happiness. Do you enjoy doing comedy? Do you enjoy writing it? Do you enjoy performing it? Do you enjoy the lifestyle? If you don't, then you need to quit, because that's the only thing that's left. Now, 0.001% of the comics in the country will get lucky. Some fluke will happen, where they have a YouTube thing that goes viral. The next thing you know, they're packing theaters or something. But if you're counting on that to happen, then that's a mistake. If you love it and you hope that you go viral or whatever, that's fine.
Right.
But without the love, why are you sitting down at the poker table and betting on a long shot?
Right.
I was there's a thing in L.A. At the what's it called? Comedy and Magic Club in L.A. This is 15 years ago or something like that. I don't even know if they still do this, but they used to do on their anniversary every year, on their birthday, essentially, the club, they would do 24 hours of comedy. So, guys like me and you we'd get a spot at like 5:37 a.m.
Right.
And we do 5 minutes at 5:37,
Right.
And Jerry Seinfeld is going up at 8 o'clock.
Right.
But you got to see all these stars. I mean, there was on that one day, the place was packed with comics, and a lot of great ones, So I hung out there all damn day, watching these comics. I saw Carlin there. I saw, it's just all these people, So anyway, at one point, there was a bunch of people in a room, and then you know how this happens in life sometimes. Just somebody must have went on stage because the room emptied. Okay, who knows? Maybe it was Hedberg went up, or I don't know who it was, but someone went on stage that everybody wanted to see. So they all left this back room, green room, and went around to watch the show. And I turned around, and it's me and Gary Shandling.
Wow.
Me and Gary Shandling are standing in this room. And so I said, Mr. Shandling, my name's Stewart Huff. I'm a young comedian. Pleasure to meet you. And he goes, hey, And I said, I don't want to make this weird. I don't want to, but I just want to say thank you for the quality, not only the stand-up, which was that was top shelf, but the TV shows, groundbreaking. And he looked at me and goes, that's real nice. That's real nice. That's cool. You think groundbreaking? Like, Larry Sanders Show, are you kidding? Are you kidding? I mean, it was not only funny, but there was art in there too. And
holds up today?
It holds up today. Yeah, I said, it's just rare. It's rare, so I don't want to make it weird, but thank you. And he goes, hey, man, really appreciate it, really appreciate it. You really think it was good? Yeah, I mean, good isn't a big enough word. I mean, I remember the HBO special that you did in like '84 or something, where when the special started, you were telling the camera that you just broken up with this girl and you didn't care about her, and then she called and you ended up running across a pool like Jesus. I laughed out loud for 10 minutes. I thought it was the funniest thing.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, and he goes, I didn't realize anybody remembered that. That's great. Thank you. And then he sat there for a second, and then he goes, you really think the TV shows were good? And then I realized it's never going to stop.
Right.
Gary Shandling is at the top tier of our art, He's
as insecure as the first.
He's as insecure as you and I are that are, trying out a new joke. It doesn't matter what he achieves. It's never going to be enough. He's always gonna. Meeting him and going through that, I'm still insecure, but I realize, look, this is the life. Enjoy it. Right. Don't nitpick it to death.
Right.
Let it be. And if something comes your way, that's fantastic. And when something comes your way and it doesn't go well, who cares? Because I'm going to get in my car and drive to Kansas City and make $400. And I'm going to have a damn good time, and I've got 7 new jokes that I'm working on, and I'm just going to have fun, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to create what I call art.
Right.
100%
agree.
Yeah, I mean,
just took me gaining 400 pounds to realize that.
Right. And it took me, I didn't gain 400 pounds, but I think people that realize that you have to go through something.
Yeah.
In order to have the introspection to be able to realize it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Losing it definitely makes you appreciate it. I guess it's true with anything. Anytime you lose something or you're away from something that you appreciate, and you start realizing every element about it that you appreciate. That's definitely true with me. Before we end, I want you to, because you'll do a much better job describing it than I will, the podcast that you just did, which is an excellent podcast. But I want you to tell the story about your almost TV show happening, because it kind of leads into the podcast a little bit, and then we'll talk about the podcast, because I think that's such a what happens to comics, or I guess anybody in the entertainment industry, the almost hit a home run and then just it flops, but it flops in a very funny way for you.
I've had very, very few, flirtations with Hollywood. Very few things have happened in my career. But when, like I said earlier, when the few things that have happened, I don't know. I've learned every time it happens. I learn more and more and more to appreciate what it is I actually like. Which is comedy on the road. So I do this podcast. Ross Duncliffe owns On Tour Records, and I'm on that label. And he opened a podcast studio, and so anyway, that's the reason I decided to do the podcast. So I came up with this idea that I wanted to do for my podcast, and then I put in like 5 days me and some friends of mine got together and recorded a bunch of episodes. Okay, so anyway. Saturday, we're done, right? A friend of mine, Peter John Burns, who's on the podcast, some of the episodes. We're sitting, we're having a drink, we're done. We just did all these podcasts, right? A lot of work, and now it's just him and I. Everybody else has left, and we're sitting there having a bourbon, and then I get an email from a company that basically produces television shows, right? And the email is, I'm paraphrasing, but they said, we're working with the History Channel, and they want to do a show, that involves a comedian traveling. They want to do a travel log with a comic type of show, and so we thought of you. And my first thought was, you thought of me? How the hell do you know me? I don't perform in San Francisco. I haven't been to California in 10 years. Well, I went once last year, but not to San Francisco. Anyway, so I exchanged some emails with them, and turns out somebody that works for this film company likes my comedy, so that's the way they found me. Okay, that's nice. That's great. They say to me, we don't have any ideas for this show. Do you have any ideas of a comedian traveling the country? Do you have any ideas? And I said, well, actually, I just recorded a podcast. And the premise of the podcast is, I'm a junk hunter, and I hunt treasures. And I buy things that are weird. They interest me, whatever it is. I don't collect anything, really. I buy random crap that, for whatever reason, I'm attracted to it. And most of the things I buy, I learn about them. Like, I go back to the hotel room and I Google any words that are on it, or I try to find out, what was this used for, or whatever, you know what I mean? And I just read about them, and I just learn about them. It's a neat way to learn about history, And so I can envision a show where cameras follow me into junk shops, and I hunt for stuff, and then I buy it, and then maybe we take it over to the library and talk to a librarian, or Google something, or just learn something. And it's all bizarre stuff,
Right.
And then maybe I write some jokes about it and do it on stage at night, So they're like, oh, we love this idea. This is great. So then we do a Skype, right? Me and this film company, and I show them some of my junk. And then they were like real hooked, because I've got weird shit, And I start showing them all this stuff, and then they're like, they were excited about it. They were like, this is it. As far as
to help the listener, just give me an example of what you consider one of your weirdest items.
God, I have some coffins, I've got you gave me a pig skull.
Yeah, yes, I did.
You gave me a pig skull, which I have sitting near my desk. I really like hair art.
You talked about that on the podcast, and I didn't Google it yet, but I want to Google what that is.
I have some in my car. I found some on this trip.
What?
I'll show it to you.
You gotta show me more.
Yeah, it's hair art is fantastic.
And it's made from people that died?
Yeah,
right?
It was this before photography, okay? So you can imagine, you want something to remember, right? So somebody dies, and very, very common, during that period, I'm trying to think of the years. Anyway, before photography, they would shave your head and, bury you bald. And then they would take your hair, and they would either do it themselves, which was that was a little rarer because most people don't have the talent. Right. But they would take it to a jeweler. Jewelers were usually skilled in hair weaving, and literally they take human hair and they make flowers out of it, and they make wreaths. If you had money, the one I have in my car is about the size of a Christmas wreath.
Wow.
And it's all human hair, But that kind of thing was very expensive. Most people would get a little something done, So you would have a little, a little piece of, like 2 buds of a flower. And from a distance, it looks like flowers. But when you get closer up, you realize that's not flowers, that's human hair, It's so detailed.
Holy cow.
So incredibly detailed. What's another thing we're doing? I'll tell you a good one that I like. Have you heard this? Trepanning?
No.
Trepanning. This is
Never heard the word.
This is an episode I have not recorded yet, but I'm doing this for my next thing. Peruvians did this on a mass scale. It is basically drilling a hole in your own skull. Okay? So you literally have a drill. And while you're awake, they would shave the head, like you're bald, right? They would shave the head and then take a knife and just cut the scalp and peel it back. and then drill directly into the skull until basically you got through it, and then they, pull it back before they damage the brain. So I have one of those drills.
Was that a religious thing, or what was it?
No, this is bizarre. I mean, how interesting is this stuff?
Right.
Right? Oh, I got to tell you this. Like, there are people to this day, like, that, well, in medical hospitals, if your brain is damaged for some reason, they do need to drill a hole in the skull to
relieve pressure.
To relieve pressure.
Yeah.
That's the key to trepanning, is relieving pressure. There are people that believe, I don't know if they're right, probably not. There are people that believe that our skull is too tight and it doesn't allow any movability of the brain. The brain can't breathe. So if you drill a hole in your own skull, then your brain actually has the ability to essentially breathe. You know what I mean? Has a little room. And they say that this is like being on mushrooms every day of your life.
What?
Your brain.
Don't tell me that, because I'm going to got to drill at home.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy, yeah. Now, there's a documentary that, well, they just kind of, this woman, Amanda Fielding is her name. She, in the 70s, she studied this in Peru. Like, literally, the skeletons they dig up in Peru, so many of them have multiple holes in their skull. They were doing this on a huge, but they did it all over the world too, but Peru seems to be really into trepanning. Amanda Fielding could not find a doctor to drill a hole in her skull. They all said, we're not doing that. So she did it to herself and made a documentary. She used a Black & Decker drill, drilled a hole right in her forehead, and made a documentary of it. And it was out in like 1972 or something. And it was.
What's the name of the documentary?
I
need this documentary like I need a hole in my head? Is that?
It was very similar to that. Very similar to that. But I'm actually looking it up right now. I'm looking up the.
Holy cow!
This documentary, like, it was shown like 10 times or something, and no one really cared about it. She actually, it's lost now. We don't actually.
Oh, so it's not
have it.
something that's like on Netflix, or I could look up.
But here's the good news. Somebody in the last 5 years or something found some sections of this documentary, right? So then they made a documentary about her. She's still alive, by the way, and her making the documentary and trepanning, right? And that's on Netflix. No, it's on Amazon Prime. It might be on It's on Netflix or Amazon Prime. Anyway, it's out there and it's new, and it's called like A Hole in the Head or something like that. And there are clips on YouTube of her drilling into her own head. And there are people in the documentary, the current one that's out, they do show a tribe like trepan this woman. They show if you're not into blood, you might want to close your eyes during it. I mean, they cut her scalp open and they drill a hole into her head while she's still awake.
Wow.
But Amanda Fielding, look her up.
Okay.
Can a hole in your head get you high? Scientific American Blog Network.
Write that one down.
Heartbeat in the Brain. That was the name of her documentary film. Look at the picture of that skull there.
Holy cow! That's not. I'm thinking like a pin-size hole. That's like a silver dollar.
Yeah, I mean, these are big. These Peruvian thing, and there's a picture of her. Wait, where's this? Let's see. How interesting is this? You know what I mean? Oh, there we go. There's a picture of her after she's drilled the hole in her head. Blood just running down her face.
Good God.
And she's doing it in a mirror, and she has the camera positioned where you can see the reflection of her. Right. Drilling this hole in her head.
Okay, well, that's my research for later on tonight.
It's fantastic. So I have I have no interest in drilling a hole in my head, but I have a lot of interest in collecting this stuff. So whenever I see, which is extremely rare, over 20 years I've found 2 items, of trepanning, but I do have one of the old-timey drills with the bits that they use to drill through the skull, So, I show, back to our original story, I show this stuff and a lot of, to the company that is working with the History Channel. And we do it on Skype. And they cut it down to 10 minutes, right? This is what they told me. Maybe they lied, I don't know, but they cut it down to 10 minutes. They seemed very interested in it. They were like, this is great. This is a great idea for a show. And they pitch it to the History Channel, and then they come back and tell me the History Channel doesn't want it. They specifically said they do not want anything that's educational, which is hilarious to me. I laughed out loud at them. And they were like, we know. And I said, you might want to call them and tell them to change the name of their channel.
Right.
The History Channel doesn't want anything educational. First of all, me going into a junk shop and finding a trepanning drill, and then we go into learning about what trepanning is, this isn't really educational.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm discussing black holes with a dry voice, and this is interesting shit.
Yeah.
You know what
cool.
I mean? Yeah, this is cool that anybody would be interested. But they didn't want it because it's too educational. And then the company said to me, do you have any other ideas that don't involve
you have something stupid for us?
Yeah.
More stupid for us?
That's
now?
exactly what they, this is pretty much exactly what they said. Do you have any other ideas that are dumber? And and I told them I have no interest in doing anything dumber. I have no interest. If I was 25, I would have tried to come up with another idea, because I would have been entertaining some dream that this is the way a comedian's supposed to act. You're supposed to want to be on TV, and this is my opportunity, and I'm going to be famous. And so, but now, if the History Channel wants to do or anybody or anything wants to do a show that's interesting, yes, I'm interested in that. That would be a lot of fun, especially if someone's going to give me money to go to today.
What you love.
I was in 3 junk shops today.
Nice.
I mean, 2 days ago, I spent over 2 hours arguing with a guy about a 1920s eye inspection device. He wouldn't come down on the price. He's a total jerk. And I'm going to go back and argue with him again. The thing was awesome. It looked like a laser beam. Nice. I want it, I do this anyway. So if someone was going to give me money to do it, yes, I'm interested in that.
That'd be the dream gig for you.
But you want me to go and do something that I'm not interested in? No. I'm 45 years old. I've learned enough to know that if I'm not happy, then it's pointless. It's pointless. So I'd rather be making very little money and enjoy what I'm doing than to be miserable sitting around and embarrassed. If I did some show that I'd pitched to them because I thought they wanted it, and I was real embarrassed, and then you think I could sit here and face you and look you in the eye? I couldn't, you know what I mean? I mean, we haven't talked in years, and I was excited to see you. If I had some stupid-ass show that you knew was stupid and I knew was stupid, I'd just avoid you. I'd be like, I don't want to face anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just ridiculous. So,
okay. Well, tell us the name of the podcast, and I'm assuming it's where all good podcasts can be found, right?
Yeah. It's called Stewart Huff's Obsessive Curiosities.
Okay.
And that's essentially what it is I, every episode I have a piece or more of junk that, sometimes I have multiple pieces, right? And, just it's all non-connected, random, I have a collection of megalodon teeth, and trepanning instruments and hair art and trench art and just whatever it is. I have a good collection of wooden prosthetic legs from the Civil War,
Right.
Just bizarre things. And I just get people that I find interesting, some comedians, some are not, and I just whip out this weird junk on them, and I say, "What do you think about this?" And sometimes they go, "You're an idiot."
You're a prop act waiting to happen, man.
Yeah,
that's what
I
it
know.
is. Take that
Yeah.
to the stage.
So some of the episodes, I'm proud of all of them, but some of them are just funny. That's it. They're just like, look at this shit. This is hilarious. And others like,
well, that was what was great. The one that you had like a pre-episode that I've heard, and then you had like episode number 1 and had another comic that I love, Tom Simmons. On there.
Yeah.
And it
Tom's
was
on.
hilarious, and it was a learning.
Yeah.
I don't remember the other gentleman's name. Somebody who was
Lowell. Yeah, Lowell is just a guy I met after a show.
He was super smart.
Super smart guy.
Right.
Real interesting. Yeah. And I think on that episode we talked about civil disobedience.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
It's a great topic.
So all of them are, I don't know. So it's called Stewart Huff's Obsessive Curiosities, and you can find it on iTunes or, ontourcomedy.com website has a podcast tab or whatever it is, but it's on most of the podcast thing. So right now that's it. That's all that's out is the first intro episode and the first real episode.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking time to talk to me tonight.
Yeah, it was great. Good seeing you again.
Right on.
Well, there we go. That was the episode. Again, thank you to Stewart Huff for taking time, for sitting down with me and giving me that opportunity to have that conversation with him and being so open and so honest about the reality of his life as a comic. That's not an uncommon story. And I can't remember if I mentioned it in the podcast or not, but I can run off a long list of comedians that I know that maybe many of you know, who have national television credits right now, who are struggling, who are living gig to gig, trying to make ends meet, and it's not an easy deal being a comic. You really, when you do comedy, you got to get into it for the love of comic, for the love of doing comedy. And that's, a mistake I think a lot of people make is if you go into it looking for some quick route to fame and fortune, you better try something else, because it's not there, right? Many brilliantly funny comics out there just trying to rub two nickels together right now and trying to get to the next gig. So when you go to comedy shows, remember that. Keep that in mind. And you see a comic after the show, don't make it weird for them when they're selling their merch after a show. They're selling a T-shirt or copies of their CDs. Maybe buy it. Spend some money. Understand that all that counts, man. If you buy a $10 CD or a $20 T-shirt or whatever, you're helping them, right? If you like to laugh, if you like stand-up comedy and you want to see more of it, support comedy, right? And don't just go to these shows where these comics that have already made it. I get it. I love these comics too. I love to go see Joe Rogan. I love Dave Chappelle. I love Chris Rock. I go see him too. But understand that there's a world of comedy out there that many of you overlook. And it's in bars and it's in small rooms and it's on open mics, and that's where it begins. And it's in the more support that you do when you go there, and if you just buying drinks at the bar or just going there and laughing and supporting them, you are helping, right? So keep that in mind. All right. Again, Stewart Huff, thank you. StewartHuff.com is the website. Stewart Huff's Obsessive Curiosities is the podcast. You can find that all the podcast places. At Stewart Huff on Twitter, and Stu Huff on Instagram. Super great guy. With a simple website. That's my current sponsor. What else we got going on? Make sure you share, subscribe, rate, and review for the Filter Free America podcast. I know you guys have been doing it already. I see it happening already, but keep doing it. Share. Help me grow. Help me get bigger. All the stuff all of us podcast people do ad nauseum. Beg you guys to do all for us. So appreciate it. But yeah, I'm out of here. This is kind of a longer lesson or episode. Let's end this now. I love you guys. You guys are wonderful human beings. Love each other. Take care of each other. Spade and neuter your pet and your children. Talk to you next time. Bye.